The Board of Selectmen meeting for Wednesday, March 3rd, 2021. First order of business is public comment. Seeing none, move on to review of minutes for February 18th, 2021. What's the pleasure of the board?
Motion to approve the minutes as presented, Mr. Chairman.
I'll second that motion.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all is in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0. Next up, the Board of Health Chairman had a previous engagement tonight, but we spoke today. They met on Monday and are working toward reopening town businesses and working with the school committee and school department to getting schools back to normal. Our numbers are looking great. We're back in the yellow as far as the state's concerned. Our percent positivity and number of quarantine cases are back to early November level. It's not August, but it's also not January. So I would encourage everyone to keep doing what we're doing, what's working. Wash your hands, wear your masks, get your vaccine whenever you can, and hopefully we'll be through this soon.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Was there any advisement by the Board of Health of the returning to normal operating hours for the public buildings in Clinton?
Yes. Sorry, that's what I meant by reopening the buildings. I think Michael wants to give some people some notice, but hopefully by next week. We have to just firm up the timing. That sound good, Michael?
A voice.
Having some audio.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, just want to unmute. That's correct. I think if we just have an opportunity tomorrow to send an email to the staff, then if the Board of Health has voted to open, that we could do that on Monday if that's something that, just to make sure the staff is aware of it and they've prepared their offices for the general public coming in. So.
Terrific, thank you. Any other questions? Moving on to utility pole installation public hearing for Catherine Street. Is there someone from National Grid here? I guess not. We will open the public hearing. I guess. Any recommendations on any of those about National Grid?
I know, Mr. Chair, they did have someone scheduled to be here, an engineer, in order to present the issue. So, hopefully they'll be in, because this here is a project that it has an application was made to National Grid, so we don't have a lot of the information beyond what National Grid is looking for. So, so I don't know how we could go forward without their representative.
Is there any opposition to taking this out of order, or at least for a couple minutes? Okay. Excuse me. We'll move on to the common victual license hearing for 180 Church Street, Mannion, Inc., doing business as Thai Time Restaurant. Please come forward. Could you state your name and address for the record, please?
My name is Sampash Ramphong. I reside at 1 Coolidge Place, apartment 517, in Clinton, Massachusetts.
And what are we doing tonight?
I'm here representing our corporation. We're now in corporation, doing business at Thai Time Restaurant, locating at 180 Church Street in Clinton. We had been in business for 9 years now under my sister's leadership, and she just recently passed away in January. So we would like to continue doing our business under the new corporation using the same service and products.
What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, is this a public hearing, or is this?
My apologies, it is. Thank you. First off, my condolences for your loss. Secondly, we'll move on to the public hearing portion of this. Is there anyone here to speak in favor of this? Hearing none, is there anyone here to speak in opposition? I'll close that portion of the public hearing. Now, what's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the transfer of the common vic license as requested.
I'll second that motion.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all is in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you and good luck. National Grid yet? Anybody? Kern? Ms. Parkinson? Nope. All right. We're all out of order tonight. Thanks for your, okay. Move on to the Cannabis Facility at 830, 894 Main Street. Crabgrass? Ms. McCarron, welcome back.
Lynn McCarron from Swampscott, Massachusetts, in reference to Crabgrass Host Community Agreement, requesting that we change the address on the Host Community Agreement, or associated, the address associated with it.
Okay.
Can you hear me all right?
Yes. All right. Can you just explain a little bit what we're looking at? I only got 3 pages. I was expecting a little more.
Yeah, that's a preliminary site review. I have all the lighting plans, the traffic impact study, everything that will be going to the planning board for site plan review. So we've switched locations. Part of our negotiation at this property was to get that 830 to 894 Main Street. You've seen the demo on what used to be the Sawtooth side. That was part of our negotiations and us facilitating that being cleared out to facilitate the transfer use from a warehouse space to a cultivation facility. In order to do that, we'll have to upgrade the electrical and HVAC and a few things. I signed a purchase and sale in August for 1.7 million, but we also have a lease, so we can execute that purchase and sale at any time, but we do have a 2-year lease option as well. So to start with, it's going to be a phased approach. So to start with, we're going to lease the office space that's there and 30,000 square feet. We're going to renovate that, upgrade the infrastructure, et cetera, and then once we get final approval from the CCC, we'll get operational, and then we'll move to the entire 30,000 square feet and then move over to the next 30,000 square feet. So it's a phased approach. As is in the host community agreement that we had for 56, the intention is to mostly be doing cultivation. We have some pretty modern, very modern technology that we're using for climate-controlled contained boxes. So we'll be starting with 50 of those, and then we'll either be expanding the use of those or we'll be doing a hybrid model. But each one of those modalities is a contained box within, the contained environment.
All right. So it just seems like it's a very different plan than before. I mean, I would just love to see. It seems like it's a lot more than just an address change. So before I want to vote, I
No,
would
it's just a larger facility, but it's the same use and the same intention. It's just a larger square footage. And we had, in our host community agreement that we had mentioned that we would be doing eventually solventless extraction, which is what we had said in the, when we were talking about 56. It's going to be a very small footprint. The majority of our focus, we don't even have that license anyway, but the majority of our focus will be cultivation. And again, it's indoor contained. And it's just that, we've gone from, I think it was 15,000 square feet or 20,000 square feet to now 30,000 square feet to start, and then moving on to another 30,000 square feet.
Okay. Again, I would love to see, what you did before for 55 and 56 kind of fleshed out here. I've got, just a blank future grow room space on this here. And again,
the plans. Okay. I can certainly send you We have a floor plan here. I could leave it with you, or, I can have it emailed to you.
What I'm saying is, usually when we get a request for this, this to me seems like a lot more than an address change. You're saying maybe 4 times the space.
Yeah, we're
and-
using the same, modalities. We are going with the Agrify, which again is a 4x8 contained unit, and so we're starting with 50 of those. So I can send you the floor plans that we have right now, the initial floor plans for this, but it's just really what we were doing at 56 at a larger scale.
Okay. Any questions on the board?
Mr. Chairman, I have a couple. First, forgive me if I don't know the answer to this, but we already did negotiate and agree to a host agreement with you at one of the previous locations.
Yes.
Are you proposing to change any part of that previously agreed to?
No,
host agreement?
everything, it's just we're switching locations. So we want to honor the same host community agreement. In fact, there's not really a location in the host community agreement. It's an addendum that was, when we've already switched it once. We were at 55 when we first, when the host community agreement was first signed and negotiated. And then we moved across the street because the building was sold out from under us, and then now the building was again for sale, and so we moved to another location because of that. And then this one happens to be that it had the option of being purchased from us, so we wouldn't get it sold out from under us again, which was obviously a positive. And then, this is a larger scale building to start, so, it seemed to be a good switch, and all the things that we negotiated, we plan to honor the 3%. The nice thing about it is the 3% now will be approximately $4 million in 3 years, as opposed to the $400,000 per year that was in the other space.
That's the only question I had, Mr. Chairman.
Anyone else? What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we, as long as town council reviews the proposal and confirms that there is no change in the host agreement, I make a motion that we approve the transfer. And the reason for that is the use of the building is not the domain or purview of our board. It's the planning board and the ZBA, and I would defer to their wisdom on any changes in the scope or scale of the proposal, and stick to our jurisdiction, which is the host agreement. So that's my motion.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all's in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Good luck.
Thank you very much.
National Grid. Still no good. Ms. Parkinson, please come forward.
Gloria Parkinson, 90 Haskell Avenue, Clinton. I apologize for, we were up with the Finance Committee.
No apology necessary.
Okay. May I introduce to you? This is David Cowell, who is the chair of the Conservation Commission.
Welcome.
Thank you.
I have been delegated to speak on behalf of the Conservation Commission, and it is our pleasure, and thank you for your time this evening. We would like to share with you a proposed project on Rauscher Farm, a town-owned property. I believe that you have some materials that were sent just before we entertain questions, because you may well have questions on that. I would just like to put some context on this project. So, and also, we're looking to all departments in town, including the Select Board and the departments, to help us with this project. And there's a lot of wisdom sitting around this room at the moment, so we will take any good ideas that you have. Thank you. I just wanted to put this project into a broader context. Its working title is Past the Clamshell Pond. It is a small, short run pathway that would go from the parking area beside the barn to find Clamshell Pond. The route of the pathway would be to run parallel down the side of Clamshell Road and then cross the field at the narrowest point of the wetlands in that field to continue on towards the existing trails that predate even when the town bought the property in 208. But before it reached that connection, there would be a viewing area, which would again be built to ADA specifications, so that people with limited mobility would be able to traverse the path, reach the observation area, and be able to look out across Clamshell Pond in all of its beauty. And as we all know, Clamshell Pond is very popular. So there is a prime ADA facility. Together with that pathway, there would be two parking areas. The current parking area that is beside the barn and immediately before the field, that would become an ADA specified parking area and would be built to the specifications of an ADA parking facility. Across the road from that spot, where there is currently it's like a lean-to, it's wooden, where the cows could go, or farm equipment could go. This is in extremely poor condition. And indeed, a couple of big snowstorms and it might well come down of its own. Currently, people also park there. There's about space for 2 cars beside there. So part of this project would be to take down that collapsing structure and to make more parking available. In other words, pretty much close to the other park, which would be the ADA specified parking area. This is not the full total of parking on Rauscher Farm, but by expanding just at that point, that allows especially fisher folk who try to park as close as possible so that they can wheel their non-motorized fishing vehicles across the Clamshell Pond. It's giving them back space that we're essentially taking away at that point for the ADA parking spot. However, another important aspect of the project is, with it routed to run down beside the road on town property, on Rauscher Farm, it takes the foot traffic and the non-motorized boat traffic away from the current way of approaching Clamshell Pond, which is, as the crow flies, straight across the field. But it so happens that that is the largest area of wetland. So by redirecting the foot traffic, we are then preserving a sensitive wetland area. So that's also part of the project. Above all, though, this path to Clamshell Pond becomes the main thoroughfare for any and all visitors to be able to access that part of Rauscher Farm on that side of the road, all the trails, how they connect all the way around the property, how they can connect to the DCR, people coming in from other directions, because there's several ways into the property. So it is serving all visitors on one level. It is specifically serving people with limited mobility who right now really don't get much access to the property. And especially, as we all know, especially in the last 12 months, Rauscher Farm has become extremely popular. Mm-hmm. There is people of all interests and ages visiting the property. There has been a lot of work done, mainly by volunteers on the property since 2008, that has opened up areas, the habitats. There's nature programs, there's geocaching, and on and on. I gave you the document, which you will have had time to read. One thing that we haven't yet got on the design, which has been circulated this evening, is that second parking spot, the one I've just referred to that has the lean-to that is collapsing. We have not yet got a design for that, although it is costed in these initial costs, which have also been circulated. The current plan at the moment is for the Conservation Commission to put an article on the warrant for this upcoming town meeting in June, and to see if the town is willing to fund the project. Right now, the costs are based on, it's $90,500. This could change before the warrant closes down, and that could be based on a number of factors. I have, in fact, talked with Mike Ward, town administrator, about the town's position on donated or volunteer labor on the project. And as the town administrator has explained to me, although volunteers are indeed covered by the town's insurance policy, what may not be covered is whatever it is that a volunteer team build. So, for example, the bridge that crosses at the narrowest point of the wetland right now is costed as one of those assembly bridges where the company provides the parts, then it is assembled on site. Footings obviously go in. So might volunteers assemble that bridge? We don't know. Mike has said that if there seemed aspect of the project that could partially done by volunteers, we would need to bring that to Mike, and then he would take it to the insurance company that covers the town. So again, the cost right now does not factor in volunteer labor at this point. The figures were a local contractor looked at the design and also factored in the second parking spot area that I've just referred to in costs, and those are the costs that you will see on that sheet for, I think it's 47.5 plus 16. Mm-hmm. The 16 refers to if the parking areas are actually paved versus using stone dust or gravel, which is an acceptable material for ADA pathways. However, one of the things that Phil Duffy advised me to check, which I have calls out at the moment, the difficulty with the stone dust is if it starts to sink, then it is no longer an ADA accessible in terms of the vehicles. So that designated ADA car parking area probably would need to be paved, whereas the other one. So this is where we are today, and we are here to tell everyone where we are today and to suggest that this is actually a very important project for the town because it opens up, it truly opens a wonderful resource that is well visited by our community. It opens it up to people who right now are not able to get up there. I better check with the chair of the Conservation Commission to make sure I've said what we need to say. Is that?
I think so, yeah. If I could say a word or two on your behalf, if you'd like.
Oh, right.
So my name is David Cowell. I'm a resident of 621 Devonwood Way, and I'm current serving chairman of the Clinton Conservation Commission. Now, Gloria, as spearheading the Rocher Farm Sub-Management Committee, they're an entity under us that is specifically to, tireless efforts at land stewardship out there and providing us with recommendations for management strategies of our own town. This has been long in the design processes of vetting this, and Gloria's worked tirelessly The Conservation Commission, we held a hearing a week ago to evaluate this and vet this, and we voted to support this. By vote, we stand behind Gloria's work on this. We may not be completely there to date. I understand that Gloria has some, what we feel are fairly realistic budgetary numbers based off of a single licensed contractor's cost estimates. We understand that as a municipal job, this would likely have to go to bid. The numbers may change. But I think just in appraisal of the general cost of materials and labor, that it's a fairly accurate budgetary number. We see some net benefit in this by not only providing ADA compliant accessibility to disabled members that access and enjoy the pond and the natural resources that we have out there, but these are also improvements off of the existing degraded conditions that are on the property now. The parking areas that exist there now, there's no designated parking spots that are lined or detailed. And if anyone's been to this property, it's very deeply and heavily rutted. If you try to, I drive a Honda Accord sedan, and anytime I pull on and off of there, I inevitably bottom out the vehicle or scratch my tailpipe. So it is, we see the necessity of that site improvement. And by the ADA compliant trail, this not only provides, as Gloria implied, access for disabled people, but it also is the primary point of use and access to the property by anyone from the general public. There is an illicit trail that goes across the field. In the current condition, the field now is a wet meadow, which is wetland, and the foot traffic just follows the same trail, which is the grading. By installation of the ADA compliant trail, this would direct foot traffic onto the property via a designated walkway. It would provide the accessibility. There's also a boat launch there that, it's not a design boat launch, it's just people will pull up, grab their kayaks or canoes, and foot traffic it out to a degraded area that's eroding, and it's just a poor area. So we see the public net benefit of this project, and I was asked to come tonight and show support for Gloria's endeavor.
Well, thank you for being here. Does the board have any questions? Do you need anything from us tonight?
No, not right now, thank you. We will be trying to see if those numbers change before there's a need to put something on the warrant.
Well, I just want to thank you for your work on this to try and make this open space truly open. And I look forward to seeing the article and to giving it my full consideration.
I should say one thing to add to that, if I may.
Please.
This year, a lot of what happens on Rauscher Farm is worked with other departments and co-sponsorships. And so we're working with Parks and Rec, we work with the library. But this year, it would have been last year, but circumstances we know, we are going to have an ADA porta potty on Rauscher Farm. And I mention this because that again is about accessibility, having that facility there. And I should also just say one more thing. Have talked with the Board of Health, talked with John McNally about reintroducing the programs on Rauscher Farm, and we'll be working in close coordination and informing him when a program is coming up and what the numbers are, because we are not going to, as we know, the days ahead are the days ahead. So I just wanted to inform this board that we do work closely with all departments.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
You're welcome anytime. National Grid, last call. Is there anyone here for that hearing from Catherine Street? Okay. What would the board like to do here?
Mr. Chairman, personally, I propose that we open the public hearing.
Take their
Give the people who have taken the time to come here tonight, give them the opportunity to speak.
And we can always
continue it to
suspend
our
it.
next
Very
meeting.
good. Then I'm going to open the hearing for the utility pole placement on Catherine Street. Is there anyone here to speak in opposition of this? Please come forward and state your name and address.
Hi, my name is Lori Danini, and I live at 1 Catherine Street. And I live in the house that's right there where the utility pole is being moved to. And I'm opposing it because the obstruction, when you're pulling out of the driveway, taking a left, and it's a very, very narrow street. I mean, the oil truck has a hard enough time getting up the street as it is, up the driveway. So I just think that in the winter months, it's going to be very difficult for us and all the homeowners. And the only one that's benefiting from this pole move is a landowner that's across the street that hasn't even been approved to do any kind of building. So it will be detrimental to all the homeowners surrounding that pole. And this is the driveway owner that here. I have a right of way, and it's a shared driveway.
Right. Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else here to speak in opposition? Please come forward.
My name is Denise Camacho, and I reside at 2 Catherine Street, owner of 128 Greeley. I also oppose this. Again, the road is very narrow. It's very difficult to turn around. The snow removal has always been an issue. The hydrant is at the end, so it's not a convenient thing to put the snow at the end of the road. And also, I had a lot of issues with the letter in general. The way I couldn't find out who applied for it, and so forth. And again, like Lori had just said, there is no building permit on file. And if and when it is approved, that is another story. It can't be built on for another year. Because he was turned down for that. Get nervous.
Take your time.
So, and the 128, the letter I got, it said 128 Greeley Street, which was very inaccurate. His owner's 128 Greeley. We did not call for any pole removal at all. So that was also a problem.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else to speak in opposition to this? I'll close that portion of the hearing. Oh, please come forward.
Barbara D'Antonis, 2 Catherine Street. That pole in its present location has been there for decades. It's out of the way of traffic at the present time, and the building that's there now only owns less than 2 feet behind the rear of that building. That pole is on town land, and to have it moved across the street would be detrimental to the whole street. For the turning for the driveways, it's close to the pavement where they want to put it now, would shorten the street for the plow. As it is, we have windrow problems because the street is narrow. So that's my opposition.
Thank you very much. Anyone else in opposition to this project? I'm going to close that portion of the hearing. Is there anyone here in support of the project? Hearing none, I'm going to close that part of the hearing. And
Mr. Chair?
Could we
Yes.
keep it open?
go ahead.
I just suggest that we keep the public hearing portion of the meeting open and continue with.
I'll second that.
I would like to make a motion to deny the request on having the pole relocated based on the grounds that this request came in from National Grid and Verizon. It looks like January 5th, 2021, but then the date of the ZBA's denial was on January 14th, 2021. So I think to honor the request, until they get approval for anything to take place there, I don't see any value in leaving that request open until the ZBA approves it.
Why do they have to go before the ZBA?
Because why do they have to go to the ZBA? Well, as far as the abutter of the property had to go, was seeking to have a relief on building a 2-family building, and I think part of that was relocating that pole so they could have that fit on that location. and the ZBA denied the request.
Here from Mass Electric, find it.
Mr. Chairman,
We're not approving it, so, yeah, so we're not approving it. I'm fine waiting a couple weeks to get National Grid in here to explain any value. I mean, it's not like we're moving forward with this. I appreciate what you're saying,
Okay.
but, so we'll keep that portion of the hearing open, and Michael, hopefully reschedule for, when is that, the 8th, 17th? All right. Moving on, Community and Economic Development Director, Mr. Duffy.
Good afternoon, members of the board. Good evening,
Welcome.
I should say. I believe we are here to talk about, to follow up two things we discussed at our last meeting. One is an update on our shared streets and winter spaces grant application for downtown, and the other is to see if you guys have any feedback on potential expressions of interest for the Massachusetts One Stop grant portal. Starting with an update on the shared streets program, since we last met, I've met with I guess about 6 of the restaurants that replied to an email expressing an interest in us having us facilitate their moving and using the sidewalk. Only one restaurant currently has requested the use of the parking like we allowed last year. That is the Bar and Grill. I've worked up a couple of schemes. I'm meeting with Elias tomorrow with schemes both showing use of the parking and use and not use of the parking. It will be to this board's discretion as to whether that permission is granted again. If in comparison to last year they used 12 parking spaces, and the plans I've drafted up this year, and we'll discuss with Elias tomorrow, show 8. So it will be a diminution of impact, but it would still be in the road. As we talk about enforcement and parking turnover in downtown, those are things to keep in mind. I personally think, though, if we enforced, I think we'd have an adequate shot of we could consider dedicating those spaces and seeing what happens. Right now, the grant application will include 3 projects. One is an implementation of our wayfinding program. You may remember in 2017, 2018, we received a grant and worked with a consultant to develop this graphic, proposing orienteering signage at 7 locations, and these are effectively branded with our graphic, and then just give simple arrows saying downtown, schools, hospital, that kind of thing, so that at critical points when people are making when people are making a decision, we're giving them the information they need to find where they're going. That component is about $21,000. We're also looking to light the alley, which is known as Doggett Place, between Aubuchon's and the Pregnancy Counseling Center. There are 2 alleys that connect back to public parking. There's that one, and there's also the alley pretty much opposite Brothers Pizza. That alley is actually adequately lit. Oxford Court has a light there, and it does the job just fine. So rather than spend money, state money, just to make something a little bit nicer, we're proposing only to light one alley. That's coming in at about $20,000. And then for implementation of the dining component, we're over budget now, including tables, chairs, shade devices, planters, potted plants, those kinds of things, all of which are deployed to socially distance while people are dining, and also to distance pedestrians from diners, using planters and those kinds of things, kind of shape how people circulate through the downtown to make sure that social distancing stays in place. Right now that's over budget. That's coming in at about $70,000, and that's too rich by a meaningful factor. So over the next couple of days, we're going to dial that back down and submit a grant that probably in the area of about $90,000.
How much, 30?
But 90. Something between 75 and 90 probably. Any questions on that?
Do we sign off on the, I'm all in favor. I want to do everything we can, as we said last year, to be creative and responsive to businesses who are reopening. It's also well documented that we had some problems with the Bar and Grill as far as their taking taking our advice as far as handling the COVID. So I'm certainly not going to stand in the way of this, but I just want to make it clear to them that we're again doing them another favor, and I would just hope that they would return that favor by the most common courtesy of making sure that their employees and our townspeople who go there to eat are kept safe. I know the Board of Health will stress that. I just want to make sure everyone who's in contact with them passes that along. Any other questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Mr. Duffy, would this project, would initiatives for pop-up store initiatives be included, a possibility under this program? Like if we wanted to start a program similar to what the Matchstick Market had in Depot Square last year, if we wanted to do something like that to generate foot traffic downtown and also to get exposure for small businesses that are not yet at the stage of brick and mortar, but would like an opportunity to be able to sell product, start a business. Is that something that would qualify for any funding under this?
Not in this program, Mr. Ed. This is funding from the Mass Department of Transportation, so it really is, focused and exclusive to the right-of-way or a public area where there's unlimited and unfettered public access. In fact, I actually had queried whether, in terms of like providing shading devices, some of the areas in the High Street where the streets are narrow, we know they'll pay for a parasol and an umbrella. Would they pay for an awning that's attached to the building? And the feedback I got was, no, that's crosses the line of the distinction between public and private property too egregiously. So this wouldn't be a good match for that per se. Although one of the things I'm thinking is that some of this equipment, this equipment will be town property, and it will be available to businesses as they turn through our downtown. And if it can be aggregated in some way for a kind of a festival or event in the public way, that might happen. But specifically for to accommodate that kind of thing, no, I'm afraid not.
And you mentioned that the Oxford Court parking lot, that you're going to make one of the alleys to High Street, just more better lighted, more pleasing for somebody walking from the parking lot to High Street?
Not the alley of the Oxford Court parking, because that one actually already has a light, and I invite you to go down and see it. The surface is in tough shape. It's overly wide. I don't think we need 3 or 4 ways to get up from the Oxford Court parking lot to High Street. But the lighting is not the problem, quite frankly. And the property is private property. So it would take too much time to actually see if we could do more in the way of improvements in that alley. And the alley we'd be talking about would be the one between Aubuchon Hardware and the building with the coffee shop in it.
Yeah.
And that connects back to the church's parking, but as we all know, it's informally used quite often in the evenings. And this would just allow people to feel safe as they went down, as they walked. They'd be able to see any tripping hazards or anything like that. So it's just a way to make a subtle connection between where people park and where people in downtown. If we want to enhance that with signage or the things, we can, but it primarily is lighting in that one alley.
Any other questions? What do you need from us on this tonight? Yeah.
I just want to give you an update. If you had strident concerns about reconsidering the use of the parking areas, I think I'd want to know that now, because we'd curtail the project for the grant application. Otherwise, I'll continue to refine the budget and submit this application on Friday.
I just want to clarify something. You did say that the proposal in front of Clinton's Grill for parking space is being reduced from 12 to 8 spaces?
Yes.
So the impact on the abutting businesses will not be as great as it was before?
Yes.
Thank you.
Feel free to proceed.
Okay, great. And then really, this is the second part of my visit to you is to discuss the expressions of interest for the one-stop. If you've had a chance to look at those potential expressions of interest, just I'm all ears. We have another month before we have to submit that, but this is a good chance to check in.
Personally, I think you've got it narrowed down pretty good, but if other members of the board had thoughts or concerns.
I don't have anything.
Okay. And so we can still deal with this next time?
Yeah, no,
Okay.
we put it on the agenda again for next
Okay.
time.
Fantastic.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to begin our fiscal year 2022 budget hearings with the Bigelow Public Library. welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's kind of weird for me being on the floor. Usually I have to sit up there. So basically, what I just handed out is a chart that uses some formulas to basically tell you how much use Clinton residents are getting out of the library by using our facilities and borrowing books and going to programs, etc. And so if you use the formula, basically it's, say, $1 million worth of library use. And so then I feel much better about asking for my budget by telling you that. So I don't know if you guys looked at it, if you want me to go line by line, if you have questions, how do you want to just proceed?
Well, I mean, if you want to talk about any big changes, it seems like it's...
It's not, there are no major changes for obvious reasons. Salaries, I just based it on the STEP program. The materials line, that doesn't change that much. That one, if you may or may not know, based on Mass General Law, has to be 16% of the total budget. That's the materials that we buy so people can borrow them. That's the stuff that everybody wants. The consortium membership, I don't make that up. That's what they charge me to belong to the consortium. And sorry, I got to take this off. And the consortium is what gives us access to 150 library materials. Mm-hmm. So that's totally worth the money. Miscellaneous is office supplies and stuff. Technology is, say, our hotspots, our hotspot monthly fees, new computers, stuff like that, copy machine. Programs, that's when we offer programs like cooking programs, musicians, history programs, anything that comes out of other people. And heating and energy is pretty straightforward. And I don't know if there's any other questions.
Was there any impact in shifting back and forth between remote and hopefully soon reopen?
Was there any impact on...
Do you anticipate any impact in going from remote to reopening again?
I think probably we will continue to do both. I think there are some people who really like it, and it does enable you to reach out more to people in other communities who might find it interesting. But I think there are also things that work much better in person, like music and plays, so to speak, or history reenactments. So I think we'll probably continue to do both.
Great. Any questions from the board?
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Kovas.
Specific to the repairs and maintenance section of the report that was provided, it states that the roof is continuing to leak after being repaired 5 years ago.
Yes.
Has the previous contractor been contacted to come back and look to evaluate?
So in terms of that, I am not sure. So that was a big enough project that the building committee took it over and sort of ran with it and did their thing. The previous facilities director did make reference to some money that hadn't been spent, not quite sure how much or if, and I think he had plans to sort of find a way to access and see what was leaking, but we'll have to wait till the new facilities manager comes in.
All right, and then there is also reference to just general deterioration of the structure itself. Do you know what is in the how much funding has been provided by the state that you have available for the upkeep of the building? Is there?
So no, you all pay for my building. The state does not provide for that specifically. I mean, we get state aid like many communities, and that is, we use it where we need to use it. We are currently in the process of We hired a architectural consultant to kind of sort of assess our building and give us a possibility. Okay, this is what you could do with this space, maybe for renovating or an addition, and we're going to see what they come up with. But I think in general, you know, the only change that has been made to the building since 1902 was an elevator. I got to say one thing, although the roof is kind of leaking, they did fix the leak between the new building and the old building, so that was a good thing. But in terms of funding for upkeep, no, that's all you. Thank you, by the way.
The funding that comes from the state, from state aid, is not applied to upkeep of the structure?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, if
Please.
I may. It's my understanding that you get significant direct aid from the state.
Not specifically for upkeep of the
specifically,
building.
but not exclusively either.
No.
You could use it for building repairs if you were so inclined.
We could, yeah,
Yes,
we could
thank
use
you.
it for anything related
Right.
specifically to the building. But I guess I misunderstood your question. Like, I thought you were saying the state gives us money to take care of the building and not specifically, no.
The only concern I have is just with the, you know, whenever there's an issue with water, it only gets worse. So however long this has been ongoing, I know there was approximately $6,400 left from the warrant article to put the roof on that building. So, and whatever we would need to do to either have the building commission or someone look into that sooner than later, because it's only going to become costlier. So if there is funding available, if there are funds available from the state, then I think that addressing that immediately would be ideal.
Anything else? Mr. Conlon?
Just as a budget hearing question, how much direct state aid does the library get?
Depends on the year. This past year, I believe we got about no, that seems wrong. I was going to say 18,000. That seems really high. Generally, it's about 19,000 for the year, 18 or 19,000 for the year.
Thank you.
One more question.
Please.
So between any contributions and any funding from the state, do you have a ballpark as to what you have available in that state aid or that aid in general?
Yes, we are using a big chunk of that state aid for this consultant. And what we have left then would be what we have left.
So that you're unaware of a ballpark number as to
What ballpark number, you mean after we spend it?
Sure.
30,000 maybe?
Okay.
Excuse me, how much was that?
30,000?
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is Mr. Kittredge, Treasurer Collector's Office.
Get some updated COVID-free. Thank you.
Mr. Kittredge, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Kittredge, how are you?
Kittredge?
Good evening, everyone.
Thank
If
you
you
for
would
coming.
like, I'll just run through my budget, and then we'll circle back for questions, comments.
Great.
So the first part is salaries. As you know, we're a two-office, four-person, full-time operation. I have three columns: final budget from last year, a level-funded budget, and a level service. Nobody asked me for a level-funded, but it was already populated in the computer, so we just went with it. So the first section is salaries, obviously. The first four line items. The next two are miscellaneous expense and Chapter 59A retirement, which just happens to land on my budget. But the miscellaneous, we've went with that amount of money for the last several years. I've probably not used it all. Whatever I don't use gets turned over. I don't run an operation where we got to spend our budget. I just, probably 70,000 of it is probably contractual things, payroll processing that we outsource, and different software and Vadar and things like that. So we've used the same number over the last several years, and it's been enough to carry the operations. The next two, and we'll circle back on this, on the debt with principal and interest as we go through the several pages. This is what I have projected for debt, principal, and interest for the year. Short-term interest, there's nothing earmarked for this, so it's just a $25,000 plug item, so we have some money available if we did some short-term borrowing. The next item is health insurance. As you know, with the Minuteman Health Group, we offer 3 different health plans, and they have, and of course everything in the health world goes up. So we've received the renewal rates. It's on a June 1st to May 31st basis, so it's not exactly fiscal year. But the rates you're looking at, for Tufts, we're looking at a 1.5% increase. Harvard Pilgrim, 1%. Fallon, 5.5%. We're probably fortunate this year because there's been a surplus. As you know, we're part of this. It's 17 communities. I think it's 15 now. But it's a self-insured group. And due to COVID, there's been, we have an expected or a targeted reserve, and it's one like this. So the numbers have been kept down. This was voted on by the group for this year.
I was pleasantly surprised by this. Usually it's at least twice that. It's only like 3.5%, I think. Like the increase. I was pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, exactly.
It's somewhat normal.
The next item is Medicare tax. It's Medicare for all the employees of the town. The 367 is the exact number for calendar year 2020. So it's obviously based on employment. The next page, I just run through, some of the missions that I put out as our goals for the department, and some of the accomplishments we've made. One of the recent ones is we had this antiquated online bill payer system that was pretty bad. It was, after 30 days, you could no longer pay online. It ended. It was an old program. So we've updated and brought in City Hall systems, which actually our deputy collector, Kelly Ryan, who's the #1 excise collector in the state, it's a subsidiary of them. So we're in the same building now for all of this. So they share files, billing files. It's working out great. And I think there's been a huge increase in online payment, which gets money to the town quicker and makes much more easier for the taxpayer. If they go online and pay with their check, there's no charge at all. So that's good. Page 3 is the miscellaneous line description. The next 2 pages is the actual debt service that we have right now on the books. Nothing new. This is existing. And then the final page. So the big item this year is as far as a change is debt. As you'll see on the page that has a yellow column and a green column. So the yellow column represents what we have. So we have existing debt, and then we have bond anticipation notes that we've issued. And if you look to the far left, you'll see the items that we've borrowed on, and it encompasses fiscal year 18, 19, 20, 21. So what you do is, you anticipate issuing bonds. So you issue, say you approve something for $100,000, you spend $30,000 during the year. You issue a bond anticipation note, and you wait until the project kind of goes along. And generally, they give you 2 years, and then you got to start paying it down to issue another bond anticipation note. Or when you get to a certain point where these projects are pretty much done, then you go out and issue bonds on the market and secure the long-term fixed arrangement. So I've been speaking to bond counsel, who's Hilltop Securities, and Mary Carney, who's been with the town for a couple decades. And she said the rates are incredible. So if you're going to lock something in, now is the time. You've got a new presidential administration. Who knows what could happen a year from now? But she's looking at under 2% for 20-year bonds, which is unheard of. To give you an example, the debt we currently owe now, I would say on average, if you averaged out all the debt, it's about 4%. So we're looking at the projects that we've approved, the projects that are going to be completed within the next 6 months. The green column is 4.3 million. So we're looking at issuing bonds, and every different article has a different time frame, but 4.3 million, we're looking at 2%, which is unheard of. So we're looking to issue bonds this year. We're going down that road, and as you see it on the lower portion, a lot of it's Chris is going to absorb for us, so in the water sewer department, so and some of it's the town and the school. But it's in those numbers in the front, and we're just going to work out, the 2.1 million is due in June. We hope to issue the bonds in June. It's going to go out to bid, so we're going to find out what the market's saying, but, all indications are the rates are great. That's it in a nutshell.
Perfect. Any questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Council on Aging. It was good, so.
Back again?
Thank you.
Thank you, Deb.
Thank you.
Thank you. Evening. Thank you.
All right. So if you look at the budget, not a lot has changed. The salaries went up the step. That was about it. The only thing, just let me get my thoughts together here. Sorry about that. When we're talking about the seniors in town, I did send a letter to the chair regarding the budget and regarding how, we need to really be careful about what we're spending, only because it's hurting our seniors. So we've got 3,700 seniors in town. The operating budget for the senior center is 0.6 of the town operating budget. And I'm not looking to increase that at all. And I actually went down on a couple lines, but went up on the outreach. And if you look in your paperwork, there is a paper in here on what the outreach does, and especially now during COVID, like I know other departments are doing all remote. We've stayed open and have assisted our seniors in any way we can, whether it's vaccines or tax appointments or anything else they need. There are two things in your packet that I do want to discuss. One is we were able to get 2 grants. One is from Fallon, and it's going to be our Fallon Farm Fresh Fridays. So you would sign up and be able to get fresh fruits and vegetables on Fridays. So we're helping our seniors with that. The other grant is not for public announcement yet, but I wanted you to have it and look at it because it's going to be huge for our seniors. So that's in there too. And then, like I said, as you guys know, out of the $320,000 budget for the senior center, we are reimbursed about $50,000 of that by the WRTA for running the van service. So when you look at the salaries, basically, shy of the van drivers, $50,000 of that is reimbursed to the town. The other thing that I put in here too was the fact that the reason I can go back on the utilities and the miscellaneous is because we do get a state grant. We get the formula grant from the state, so I can use that money, and we are very actively looking for other grants so that we don't have to go up in our budget. I'm more nervous now than I was the last 3 times. I don't know why.
Not going up is a good thing.
Yeah.
Are you ready for questions?
Any questions?
Any questions?
Question,
Mr. Conley.
Deb? The outreach worker?
Yes.
Is currently funded partially with the grant.
Correct.
Does the grant go away?
No.
So
No, the grant is
will
from
be
the state, it may go
reallocate-
down. Right now, it's, I think, $12 a senior, based on 2010 census, which has us at about 2,400 seniors. But that amount may go down depending on what the state does. It was, when I started, it was originally at 9, and then it went up to 12, and now they're talking about coming back down a little bit. But like I said, the outreach right now, like I said, set up 120 tax appointments. And some of the things, like I said, when we talk about the senior center, we always talk about the good things, the fun things, the Farm Fresh Fridays, the drive-throughs, the bingo, the fitness, the, Wild Women, Dull Men, and all of our groups that we have up there, the book clubs. But we don't talk about the stuff that outreach does, because it's kind of private, it's kind of personal. Outreach is doing your food assistance, your fuel assistance. We have seniors that, need housing. They can't afford their apartments, so they need to get into housing. We help with the housing applications. We help with, we had a gentleman who didn't have a furnace since last year, and the fire department actually helped us with that, got fire detectors put in his home. We had a woman whose husband was a senior, and she's shy of a senior, and we were able to help her with paying her rent. We were able to set that up so she had her rent paid, so that she could stay where she is until we could get her cash assistance. We are helping caregivers to put their family members into long-term care, which is always hard. We're helping with home services. There's so much involved with what outreach does and what we do at the center that's not the fun stuff, but it's probably more valuable than the fun stuff. And like I said, a lot of that behind the scenes people don't know about unless you were directly affected by it.
Okay, so if I could follow up with that. I'm not questioning the value of the outreach worker or the work that is done. I think it's outstanding, it's great, but I'm asking, is the $10,000 that currently funds that position through a grant going away, or are you reallocating it to another opportunity?
I want to reallocate it to doing more programming. So I would like the outreach worker, because right now we pay the 25 out of the town, and then out of separate we pay the other 10. So the person is working 35 hours regardless, it's just we're paying it out of the other. But if I was able to free up the formula grant, that can be used for so many other things. It can be used for many other things.
And I'm not disagreeing with the value of doing that, but I want to be clear on that is what the proposal is. It's not about whether or not we'll have a full-time outreach worker. It's about what else are you going to do with the money?
Right, because we will still have a full-time, regardless of, let's say you cut that right out of my budget, that person will still be full-time if the personnel board, approves it, because right now it's going through the process. And like I said, even this COVID time, with loneliness and isolation and caregiver burnout, there's just a lot going on. So the personnel board did approve it at 35 hours for this whole past year. But having seen that, what the effects of that has been, there's no way I could go back to 25 because it's such a, yeah.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, that's not what I'm asking or even suggesting. I'm asking if the town didn't approve your budget request here, would you still be able to fund that position full at the number of hours that it currently is?
I'd have to, yeah.
Utilizing that grant?
I'd have to. I'd have to cut it somewhere else, but yeah, absolutely.
Well, you'd have to cut it from someplace else that it's not being spent in right now that you would like to spend it on next year, is the way I understand this. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you're not wrong.
All right, thank you. I just wanted to understand it clearly.
But like I said, for what the senior center does, like I said, for 3,700 seniors at 0.6 of the town's operating budget, I mean, I don't think 320,000 is a lot to ask for.
Absolutely not.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, you're doing a good job.
Chief Lavager. Sorry, interim chief.
interim chief.
Good evening.
Good evening, Chief.
John? Department's in transition this year with we've had a lot of people leave over the past year, and we've got new people coming in, and that results in the budget actually going down a little bit. If you read my cover letter, you can see what my increases are and explain some of the decreases in some of the line items. And the big thing that we're looking for, and I feel is absolutely necessary, is a second lieutenant on the department. And that cost difference will be between the difference between a lieutenant's salary and a patrolman's salary, which is roughly $31,000. With the police reform bill, the bureaucracy that they're setting up is there's going to be the need for that extra administrator over there at the department. The department's going to have to become accredited, and that right there in and of itself is a job for one person. They're going to have to develop policy. They're going to have to train all the officers in that policy, and then they're going to have to supervise the officers to make sure they're abiding by the policy and doing what they were trained to do. And so that's the priority in this budget right now. That you have a decrease in the patrolman's salaries line item, and that's because we've hired new people, and senior people that are on a higher step have retired. You have a decrease in longevity pay because you have less senior officers on the department. You have a decrease in the sick time buyback because there's fewer officers retiring this year. And a decrease in the Quinn bill because the older officers are covered under the Quinn bill, and the new officers that come on are not covered under the Quinn bill. So there's a pretty big savings there. Increase in training and education, as I just spoke, that the officers are going to have to be trained in all the new policy that is coming out, and the expense of the officers we got going through the academy. We're going to really need that increase that I have in the budget of the training. And police uniform, again, we have 3 new recruits, and that's the increase in the police uniforms. And the new equipment, we have 2 cruisers. We got 1 last cruiser. Our routine is that every 8 months we get a cruiser, and so it comes out to 1 cruiser 1 year. The next year you get 2 cruisers. We're in pretty good shape as the cruisers go now. We bought a detective unit out of the law enforcement fund last year for the drug detective, and so the detectives, they're in new vehicles, so they're in pretty good shape, and there's only a couple of officers that drive them, so they tend to last a lot longer than the line cruisers. Any questions? Oh, first of all, the names that are in those positions, the promoted positions, I just plugged those names in so I could come up with the number to show you. Don't think that those are going to be the people that are going to be promoted. They may be, they may not be. I just pushed the senior people up, so they're in there. So I don't want anyone to get excited and say, "Oh, we've already decided who's going to get the promotions," but that's not the case. And any questions?
Any questions? Easy night. Thank you.
That was easy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Have a good night.
You too. And last but not least, Department of Public Works.
Do you guys have copies of my budget there?
They're in the packets, yep.
All right. So as you all probably know, my budget is split into basically 4 different departments, 3 of which are enterprise funds, and 1, the Public Works. Basically, the road department is under the general fund budget. So starting with the Public Works budget, I gave a level funded budget and a level service budget. The major difference from last year, we have wage increases from the union contract, which they're on the last year of their contract right now. Basically, everything else stays the same, except miscellaneous expense would have to go down on a level funded budget, and would request that we bump that actually up some. And again, I would love to say we want to use the extra money to pave roads, but really what we need extra money in the DPW budget for is to comply with the stormwater permit that was issued a couple years ago. It's a 10-year permit. We're on our 3rd year right now. We're into our 3rd year, so we have 10 years to get everything that needs to be done. I did get a quote from a consultant after I prepared this budget just over the last couple of days, and she's recommending that we actually spend $100,000 next year. We don't have to, but eventually we do. And what's going to happen is if we push stuff off year after year, we get to year 7, 8, 9, or 8, 9, and 10 of this process, we're going to have some problems. We're going to need some serious money. One thing I'm thinking about possibly doing this year is once I got to talk to the consultant again to see what the future years look like compared to what she had proposed for this year. And, the possibility, instead of raising the budget to cover these expenses, if they're not going to be like compounded over the years, is possibly even having a warrant article to cover, especially if we had some free cash maybe. And I'm not saying we should borrow to pay for this because this is going to go on forever, but possibly, if there was free cash, maybe taking a little bit of money out of there, $50,000 or something, to try to get us a little bit ahead of where we were. So I'll come back with you on that one, but I'll come back to you after I talk to the consultant about where we're at with those things. So, any questions on this one?
I do have a question, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Coase.
So as far as the road resurfacing, so that being that there's nothing there, there's nothing shown on that light item, is that because that would be dependent upon?
Well, the road resurfacing, this is for basic maintenance of the roads, generally the DPW miscellaneous, equipment, tools, maintenance of the road, maintenance of the equipment, stuff like that. That's generally what we use this line item for. When it comes to paving roads, there's 2 sources of revenue. Now, there was always just one source of revenue, it was Chapter 90 money. And now we use the Chapter 90 money, and every year we've been having a warrant article to come out of the infrastructure, the landfill infrastructure money. And I'll be proposing that we do that again this year to keep pushing hard on paving a lot of these decrepit roads. So that's where that money would come from, though, would be Chapter 90, combination of Chapter 90 and articles, additional articles.
Anything else? Moving on.
All right, Water and Sewer Enterprise Fund. So again, we have a very similar budget to last year. It's level fund and level service are the same because it's based on revenue. So right now I'm showing that we're going to be spending less money than we spent last year. That's not necessarily what the final budget's going to look like. I'm waiting, or Diane Magliozzi, our town accountant, redid the employee benefits line item. If you look up top, we had $77,000, and I haven't sat down with her yet because I want to make sure we have the right employees and the right number of employees that she's calculating this out. But she came up with it was a shocker of $220,000, which would be an increase of about $150,000 in that line item. And I have to sit down with her to confirm that. I mean, basically where it would come out of is we would shuffle it out from other line items. We could also contemplate raising rates again. We raised rates, last year we did not raise the rates, and then the 3 years prior to that, we raised them, did we raise them 2% or 3%? I can't remember. 2 or 3% each year for 3 years. And those were the first increases, probably in a 10-year period. So the possibility, depending on how this shapes out, we could possibly be thinking about that. One saving grace is if you look at the last line item, we have the debt and interest, and that's state-funded debt is what that's for. It was for the water filtration plant. That's going from $680,000 down to $165,000, which gives us a lot of room. But the normal debt and interest, which John Kittredge was talking to you guys earlier about, you can see that we're getting bumped up, which he said a portion of, a good portion of his borrowing was water and sewer. That's where that money is. So we're going to be bumped up by about $200,000, but we had a substantial gain on the other one. So we do have wiggle room in this budget to jockey some stuff around. We are this year kind of struggling with spending. We're at a point now where I'm almost at a freeze on spending for the last 3 or 4 months. Not a complete freeze, but anything even remotely substantial we're putting off because we had a lot of problems, and not big problems, but just common problems that happen when you're running a water system and a water filtration plant. Stuff happens and stuff breaks and you got to fix it. So we are struggling a little. So I did bump up. If you look at one of the big items we've had is this pump stations. I bumped it up from $190,000 to $250,000 to try to cover in case this happens again next year. So we're in a position where we can get a little bit comfortable with the budget instead of trying to nail it down, because what ends up happening is you spend the money you need to spend, you make repairs, and if there's money left over, it stays in the enterprise fund. It ends up being retained earnings, and then you can take the retained earnings when it builds a little bit and do some projects with it. So instead of borrowing, so that's where we're at with water and sewer.
I just have one question, Mr. Chair. For the heat, light, and power under the water and sewer enterprises, would that be the filtration plant and?
Yeah, a huge portion of that is the pump stations and the filtration plant. It's a massive, just the pumps running 24/7. It's a huge amount of money. That's where the majority of that money is, and heating the buildings obviously and stuff. So yes, that's what that's for.
Next.
Rubbish Enterprise Fund. Again, rubbish is another level service budget, basically, where what we hope to do is use the current revenue to cover our costs. If you look at most of the items are very similar to last year's items. The big difference I have here is under rubbish maintenance and disposal, and that is gone up significantly, and that's for our disposal of our waste. We've had and it's more than likely, it's 100% because of COVID, but we have about a 20% increase in our disposal quantities this year over last year, which is substantial. And I don't know what that number is going to be like for next year, so I put in enough money to cover that cost. I'm hoping that when things get back to normal, people working from home, they're generating more trash at home instead of in the office, and we end up disposing of it. So kids being home, they're eating at home, they're wasting at home instead of wasting at this. Well, we pick up the school stuff too, but we are at a point where this year we're going to need to budget a bit extra money. Some of that money we can chew up because our debt and interest that money was to pay for the $38,000 on the 21 budget was for recycle bins, and those are now paid for, so we gain a little bit of money there. And I think, I put in at the bottom that we are going to use some retained earnings. I don't know exactly what we have for another 3 weeks or so for retained earnings. I'm sure we have at least that much. And that's just just in case the revenue doesn't cover the costs. You have that in there, so the DOR will, they stay happy. Instead of, if you overspend your budget, you're going to be in trouble, and they'd make us raise rates. And so I think we stay pat where we are on the rubbish, and hope that the disposal numbers come down a little bit from last year.
Questions? Okay.
My last is the Landfill Enterprise Fund, which is very similar to last year's budget. It's a little bit lower. We have I lowered the permitting and engineering because a lot of that money is now going to be spent out of articles for the landfill capping and the pond dredging, so we don't quite need as much under that. Our debt has gone down a little bit because a little of that has been paid off. Other than that, it's basically a very similar, the same. The permanent equipment and supplies went down a bit because one of the pieces of equipment is now paid for, so the lease is paid off, so that dropped a little bit too. So that's similar. We went down a bit, but it's very similar to what it was.
Questions? All right.
We'll have a few warrant articles that I'm still tweaking, which a lot of those are landfill related, to kind of shuffling the money around to where it belongs. So.
Okay, well, you're staying right there.
Okay.
So we have some updates.
So we have a few projects, I just wanted to update you guys on. I would like to put out to bid, or I plan on putting out to bid, a Greeley Street reconstruction project. Last year we redid the water main on Greeley Street, so I would like to put this out to bid. It'll probably be ready to bid within a couple of weeks, I'm hoping. The engineer's working on it right now, working on the bid package, so should be available in a couple of weeks. And what I'd like to do, we had a warrant article last year, the road resurfacing warrant article. There's a little bit less than $1 million left in that. What I'd like to do is also spend our Chapter 90 money. So whatever this year's allotment is for Chapter 90 money, spend that money first, and then the balance we'll take out of that road resurfacing warrant article. And then we'll, later on in the year after town meeting, we'll hopefully appropriate more money for roads. I'll have another list of roads for you. We'll clean up that warrant article and move on to the next one. So that'll be the plan. But Greeley Street's, and everyone who drives it knows it. And the water line project obviously was done late in the year, so it's in tough shape. And we're going to do sidewalks, curbing. It's kind of a mix. It's not going to be granite curb the entire width, way on both sides, but there's going to be a lot of concrete sidewalk and granite curbing. Going to be real nice. So
great.
I know a lot of people in town are questioning what's going on with the Cameron Street retaining wall. So we had a retaining wall failure on adjacent to Weetabix on the road. It's a wall holding up the road. That wall's been bowed since I've been here. There's been a good-sized bow in that wall. I never really touched it because, it was working. It was holding up. And whether we did the project 10 years ago or now, it's basically the same project, but it collapsed. The sidewalk has collapsed a bit. The road's staying up fine. I should have a plan. It's about 8 feet high, the wall, so it requires an engineer stamp. It had to be designed, so we ended up having to get a surveyor in there, and it's now 95% designed. I'm supposed to have the plan on Friday, and I'll put it out to bid after that. I don't have an engineer's estimate yet. I'm speculating it's going to be in the $50,000 range to repair that wall. And with the board's approval, I want to use the only money we have is the infrastructure article from last year. So there's money in that will be able to cover this, so it doesn't have to come out of a reserve fund or anything like that. So,
are there any other potential fail points on that slope?
The rest of the wall is straight. It really was that one spot that had a good bow. You could see that over the years. That wall's probably 120 to 140 years old, and you can see they've done repairs in the past on that wall. The area that collapsed is probably very close to the highest that wall is right in that area. Like I said, it's been bowed for a long time. It hasn't been moving in 15 years since I've been here. I check it out every once in a while, and one day it just went. So.
Okay.
The last item here we have is, I don't know if you guys all remember, I'm sure last year we did some forest management out at our land in Sterling, so which the project went really well. The state, the environmental people at the state are thrilled with the outcome of it. They said it looks, spectacular right now. In 1 year, usually takes a couple years for it to really look good, but they said even in 1 year, the difference is really noticeable. And, the town made a little bit of money on it. It was like $40,000 something we get for the lumber. makes the forest better ecologically, and we want to continue doing that. So the next phase of the project is about 70 acres, so to be across the street from the one that we did. So this was in the Fitch Basin. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the area, probably not, but Fitch Basin is on one side of the road. The other side is the upper and lower Lindy reservoirs, they're called, and we want to get that area taken care of. It's pretty much ready to go out to bid right now. It is ready to go out to bid right now, but I wanted to come because we did have a little bit of kickback, and you always do. Whenever you do a project like this, you're going to get kickback from residents and from, it's not in Clinton, which makes it more difficult, but I think they're worthwhile projects. The town makes a little bit of money. We're not, it's not like we're doing this to run our whole water system. It's a small amount of money, but it's, we have to maintain the dams. We have work to do up there. So, it defrays the cost of the dam inspections and any improvements we have to do on the dams. I would recommend that maybe Michael could get a hold of the town administrator from Sterling for sure, and I'll get a hold of the DPW superintendent out there, and I'll make sure that the Conservation Commission is aware, and we'll put up some signs, letting people know that it's coming. We've already had, because the forester is out there marking trees, so we've already had a few neighbors. Some were okay with it and some were not, so it's definitely going to be a hot issue, but I think it's worthwhile, and I think it's the right thing to do. So, wanted you guys' blessing, and just to let you know that's the plan.
But, Mr. Chairman, if I may, just Chris, the idea of notifying the town administrator or the DPW superintendent, at least those 2 points, it's only a courtesy. You're not asking for
It's
permission.
all, yeah. We don't have to. What we have to do is we have to notify butters. We have to notify the Conservation Commission, because you don't need, these are exempt from order of conditions. We don't need order of conditions on this, but you have to let the Conservation Commission know. So it's a complete courtesy to let anyone else know. But you did have other, last year we had people from 22 houses away saying, why didn't I get notified? But there's state regulations on who you notify, and and if you notify a little bit further out, well, why didn't you go a little further out, and why didn't you go? So if we let the town know, they can notify whoever they want.
Right.
As far as I'm concerned, they can let Sterling, they can notify whoever they want, and I think it would be the right thing to do for us to notify them without question, and make sure conservation's on board, and I'd let the DPW know just because they get calls also, and like I said, it's the right thing to do for forest management. They do it on Sterling. The town of Sterling does it on their own forests out there. They have the similar area with the similar type of forests, and they do it. They also do it. So.
And Mr. Chair, the town administrator in Sterling is new. So if the board is, supportive of this, it would be a good way for me to have an opportunity to discuss this issue with that town administrator, Hebert.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. Thank you.
All right.
Administrative business. I have nothing on that, Michael. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay. On to old and new business. Prescott Mills Vaccine Clinic at Town Hall. What can you tell us about that, Michael?
Mr. Chair, this is a request from the manager of Prescott Mills. Because they're a kind of congregate housing facility, they are eligible to vaccinate their residents. They were asking if there was kind of a larger space that they could do it. They did hear that the UMass Senior Center program that we did at the Town Hall Auditorium, that it went really well and it was very organized, and they were asking if they could use that building. It's just a one-time deal for 2 hours. They anticipate maybe 40 residents. They don't know from week to week when they get on the list, but it would be on a Thursday. So either next Thursday or the Thursday after, they're hoping, and they were just asking permission if they could do that for 2 hours here at the Town Hall to help them out.
It's a pleasure of the board.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we authorize Prescott Mills to utilize Town Hall for a vaccine clinic.
I'll second that motion.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all is in favor? Aye. Opposed? 5-0. Town lawn composting, this is mine. We discussed it informally at our most recent Solid Waste Advisory Committee meeting, and I just wanted to very exploratorily put it forward before the board, just because of, as Mr. McGowan said, increasing costs in disposal of trash and recycling, and there's some recent news reports about some other towns in the Commonwealth. It's something I've been interested in a while. My family has been doing it for a long time. In no way would this be a mandate. I just wanted to make sure that if the board had serious reservations of me trying to come up with some options, there's many different ways that this is done in other towns, and we could either do it as a pilot, whether the town would do it, whether we would contract someone. Again, I have not done any exploration on this, but I didn't want to waste any time if the board had strong reservations to me exploring.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we request that the chair develop a townwide composting program.
I'll second the motion.
Motion made and seconded. Thank you. Any discussion? Again, this is just to come up with some options for the Solid Waste Advisory Committee to consider. I just think it's a good way. Estimates that I saw today put composting, for people who aren't familiar with it, it's mostly food waste and biodegradable things that can be reused. If you're gardening and now not doing it, you're not gardening as well as you should. But the estimate is that you could take maybe 25 or 30% out of our trash stream, which would obviously help us with that cost. So, any other discussion? Hearing none. All's in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Registrar of Voters appointment. Michael?
Sure, Mr. Chair, if I just pass on. This is the town clerk had asked if the board consider the Registrar of Voters as an appointment by the Board of Selectmen. One of the Democratic, they're split by party, and one of the Democratic representatives has resigned from the board. So the Democratic Town Committee, in the packet, there was a letter that they had submitted for a recommendation for somebody from their party to take that position. So the board would be inclined to take that recommendation, then we can make that appointment to fill.
And the name, okay. It's Michelle Hutchison, is that correct, of 7 Martin Street?
Right.
Okay.
Chairman, I make a motion that the board appoint Michelle Hutchinson as a
Second the
registrar
motion.
of voters.
Hutchian, just so we're
Hutchins,
clear.
I'm sorry.
Okay, Michael has the spelling. Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all's in favor? Aye. Opposed? 5-0.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question about
Yes.
the process. Is that a town bylaw that the registrars be from the 2 major parties? Or is it a tradition?
That's a good question. Whether it's a state law or a town bylaw, but it's always been even amount because they do oversee the registration and the elections. But certainly we can get an answer back for next meeting. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to know the answer to that. Is it a requirement or is it a custom, basically?
I also don't know.
It's the way we've always done it.
Right.
I understand that, but in
Doesn't
this
mean it's
era
right.
of the way politics are, I don't know that that's, unless it's a requirement, it's whether or not we should be continuing that process.
Certainly we can find that out pretty quickly.
Excuse me. Clinton High School Scholarship Fund donation request.
This was just from the CPS scholarship fund. Every year they do their fundraising letter. Last year the selectmen donated $250. And again, they're just preparing for graduation for community scholarships that they give out at the end of the year.
It's a pleasure of the board.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to make a motion that we authorize a $500 contribution to the scholarship fund. The last couple of years, we've increased the
civic fund
up a little bit, yeah.
Civic fund for the purpose of expanding, and we haven't had that many requests
No.
for use of the fund, so That's my motion.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? 5-0. Bylaw Review Committee,
I'll table it.
we're going to table that. Town Administrator Evaluation. Earlier this year, the Board of Selectmen and Town Administrator took part in a pilot evaluation process intended to create standards for future employee evaluations and set goals and objectives for the Town Administrator moving forward. The following is a summary of that evaluation. Areas in which the Administrator exceeds expectation include working with Selectmen, understanding of municipal law and town history, proposing knowledgeable proposals for improvement, taking on roles that have been understaffed until recently, including human resources, facilities, and public access television, and availability. Areas in which the administrator meets expectations include fiscal management, community and intergovernmental relations, capital management. Areas in which the administrator needs improvement include delegation of minor tasks, clear goals, expectations and accountability of reporting staff, organization, prioritization, and tracking of town projects, working to instill a customer service atmosphere for town services, and areas in which the board was unable to rate the administrator or needed more data include handling of townwide IT services and equipment, and handling of surplus unused materials that are taking up space at town buildings. As a point of clarification, the Evaluation Subcommittee believes that most items rated as needing improvement could be tracked to a lack of personnel infrastructure and/or clear communication from the Board of Selectmen on priorities and expectations. The subcommittee feels this evaluation process should fix both issues. Aside from these items, which can be addressed easily, the subcommittee finds the town administrator to be the correct leadership to take Clinton into the next 5 to 10 years and is happy to continue to work with him. Next steps include proposing solutions for any items needing improvement, setting town administrator goals for his next evaluation, scheduled for July 2021, and working with the town administrator and human resources director to set up an evaluation process for all direct reports. Does anyone from the committee have anything to add?
Just, Mr. Chair, that we did get a chance to meet with the town administrator last night and discuss some proposals for some of those line items that were identified as needing improvement, and we will be presenting those proposals at the next Selectmen's meeting.
Thank you. Good. Any other questions? Moving on to an update on the West Ledge Streetlight project.
Mr. Chair, if I could, just to give an update that we're hoping that in the near future, this month, that those lights will be energized. I had recently been talking with National Grid. We had executed a service agreement. We had to provide insurance requirements. Our insurance company provided all that paperwork, but I just found out recently that National Grid rejected our insurance forms, and they needed to be revised, so it's delayed the energization a little bit. So our insurance company is working with them to rectify that, and then National Grid said that once that gets done, then this month they'll have a crew out there to get those lights on. So the lights are up, they are installed, they just need to be energized by National Grid. So we'll keep on top of that, and it should be done shortly.
Any questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chair. Mike, so just to be clear, so initially a kind of understanding was the ball was in National Grid's court, and now it's kind of in our insurance agent's court to communicate with National Grid and come to some sort of understanding or agreement or approval of our the town's insurance?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. Because we own those lights now, they're energizing them, and we're owning them and going to pay them service. So they wanted certain insurance requirements. So I guess they thought what they had sent them was sufficient, but they needed something more. So we'll keep on top of that.
Okay. Just was there any indication from the insurance company that this was, a simple remedy, or I don't know, or maybe you haven't had a chance to talk to them yet, and just... Yeah, I did reach out to them, and they were going to look into it and get back to me, so I don't know. I don't think it's not a problem. I think it is a simple remedy, but
as National Grid said, they're very peculiar when it's not their lights. So that was their answer, and so I'm confident that our insurance can work that out, so that shouldn't be an issue. But as soon as I get more information, I can let you know.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Moving on to an update on the Savage Field lighting project.
Just as a quick update, and I know Mr. McGowan is here as well too, that my understanding in my situation, I wasn't able to be at the meeting last night, but there was a bid opening for the Savage Field upgrade project, lighting upgrade for the Little League field at Savage Park, and the Systems Electrical Service from Chelsea, Massachusetts submitted a low bid of $78,050. Last night, the Permanent Building Committee met and awarded that contract to that company, to the low bidder, since we checked out some references and they seem to have experience in this field. So at this point, we'll go forward with that company and start working on that project. The new facilities director will be starting on March 15th, so we'll do what we can next week, and then hopefully the facilities director will take it over from there. So finally moving forward on that project, and we'll let you know when it's complete. So the deadline in the bid package was for April 15th. So hopefully that is a doable project. There are 4 lights that are being installed there, so hopefully that can work. But of course, there's gas line issues there, and coming out of the winter season. So the emphasis on the contractor that that's a priority, that this needs to be the first project that they get on this season. So, but we purchased the lights ourselves from Musco Lighting. That cost was $114,000, and Musco has worked with this contractor, and they've done several projects, some big projects, some smaller projects. So they're confident that they know their system and they know what needs to be done.
Thank you. Any questions?
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Kovas.
So I'm elated to hear that this has moved forward, and I think based upon the timeline of this project, I think it would be pertinent to do a kind of a post-mortem. I mean, we had voted on this back in end of August, early September, to make this a priority, and it's finally taken to March where we actually have seen some movement with it. So I think just to look at the process and to see how can we, improve any efficiencies within the project management itself, I think would be beneficial. And thank you, Mr. Ward, for everything you've done on moving this forward.
All right. Moving on, cable director appointment. I feel we should have some smoke from a chimney on this one. Go ahead, Michael.
So I think, Mr. Chair, I'd like to put forward the name of Mark McGinn for the new cable director. I appreciate the work through the search committee and that we've done. Again, we've had numerous candidates who qualified, and some people were dropped out along the way. But I think Mr. McGinn has the qualifications for us to at least get started in this position. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. And I think based on where we are right now, I think he's a good person that can start developing this department where we want it to go.
And traditionally, this board has 15 days to veto this appointment. I would accept, if it pleases the board, I would accept a motion to waive that period.
Mr. Chairman, I move we waive the 15-day waiting period and welcome Mr. McGinn to the town of Clinton employment.
Get him on board. I'll second that motion.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. 5-0. That concludes our agenda for the evening. The board will be...
Mr. Chairman, before we move on,
yes,
a couple of old or new business points I'd like to clarify. Have we set the date for annual town meeting?
No, not other than it'd be late this year, later than usual, just because I think the Monday is, I think June starts on a Tuesday. Yeah, so I'm assuming we go on first Monday, second Monday. The elections are scheduled for the 14th, that's my understanding.
Right, that's why I'm
So
clarifying.
this past, or tradition, as tradition holds, it would be the 7th, right, Michael?
Right, that would be our bylaw date, and I think that was the date that we were working towards unless there's any reason to change.
I just wanted to clarify that that was the proposed date.
That's my understanding, yes.
And at our next meeting, would it be too soon to develop a calendar for the warrant and maybe, even though we haven't heard all the budgets, maybe have a draft budget of the last year's, the requested, and an open column for approved, so we can start filling in the dots?
Sure, absolutely, yep, because I think with the revenue side of things, I think it's important for the board to see that, so absolutely. And I think getting the opening of the warrant articles certainly is helpful too, because if there's spending articles, we're going to need to know that as part of the funding of the budget. So, yep, so I think that's a good strategy, yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other old or new business? Hearing none, the board will be entering 3 executive sessions, for Article 6, Article 2, and Article 3 of the open meeting law. We will not be returning to public session following those 3 executive sessions. Entering into executive session requires a roll call. Mr. DeVoe?
Aye.
Mr. Connolly?
Aye.
Mr. Kobus?
Aye.
Mr. Busno? And the chair is aye. Our next meeting is March 17th. Thank you and good night.